Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Introduction to Web Development. Now in this video, we are going to be covering tables in HTML. And if you don't know, tables are sort of like ways to display information with rows and columns. So in a table, you might have like 3 rows and 2 columns, and you can kind of like display things in like that sort of grid slash table manner. So what we'll be specifically going over are the various table HTML. And actually, tables are generally more HTML, at least at the beginning. It's just a ton of HTML elements, and then there's a tiny bit of styling that is like basic to go with them. I personally have used them a bit in my personal website, although I would say that they're a little bit less commonly used than other elements that we've covered already, but they're still really great to know nonetheless. So we're going to go ahead and jump straight into it and open up our index.html. Then we're going to click this Go Live button in the bottom right. And remember, if you do not have this button, you can go ahead and go back to the first tutorial video, I believe, where I showed you how to install the live server. Once you click on that, it'll open up our code from the previous episode. Now, this is where we left off, and I am going to go ahead and delete, this time I am going to delete a good portion of the code. I'm going to delete everything up from the UL to the image, and we're going to still keep some of this. Actually, I'm going to also remove this. You know what? I'll just remove all of it so that we will be left with a blank canvas here. So this is actually what the HTML file looked like before we began, or like actually in the middle of episode 1. So this is back to the basics of a blank website. So to get started, we're going to use the, we're going to create a simple table. So to start, we want to create a table element or a table tag, just like this. And this kind of just says to the program, we're making a table. And similarly to how, like when we created a UL, an unordered list, we had to put li elements. The table tag has a bunch of nested tags as well, aka tags that are inside it. So one of them is tr, and we're going to have several TRs. And TR stands for kind of like table rows. So this one, we'll just make it with 2 rows. We'll make it very simple. And then inside, we want to put a, inside this one, for example, we want to put a TD. And then we would put a second TD. We're going to make a 2x2, or a 3x2 actually. So let's put some TDs in here. Whoops. And then TD. And then in here, so notice the way this is separated right now. So you have the table element, which opens and closes right here. And then inside the table, on the next level, you have TRs, which are the rows of the table, because you define the rows before you define the columns. And then in these the second and third TRs, we want to put TDs. And TDs are columns, basically. Every TD is a column and every TR is a row. You can think of it like that. But in this first one, we're actually going to put a different tag called th, and this is basically also a column, except it just denotes that there is a header. This is a column header. So we can say column 1, and then column 2, and then in these we can put like data, 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 and data. And if we save this, notice it's in a table format. There's call 1 and call 2, which are both bolded because they are ths, they're headers. And then we have data, 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 and data. And we can even number it. So like data 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you'll notice, this is the second row. So this one will be data 1, this one will be data 2, and then this is the final row. This one will be data 3, and this one will be data 4. And if I save that, you can see it's like that. So that is basically how you create a table. You have the table, and then on the inside you have various TRs for the rows. And then you have TDs to denote columns, and you have THs to denote headers. And that, is actually fairly simple. It does take it took me a bit at least to kind of like memorize this structure. So that's like just something you need to keep in mind. Just remember like it's table and then TR, TH, TR, TD, TR, TD, and you could keep going into infinity. And I don't think you even need to have a TH unless you actually have column headers. If it's just like a grid, you don't necessarily need it. So for styling, we're going to open up our style.css file, and we're actually just going to delete everything in here since we deleted all of the HTML anyways. So in here, we are going to want to give our table a selector. So we can just give this an ID. Remember, an ID attribute allows us to select the table, and then we can just say our table, r-table. And in our style.css, remember to select IDs, we are going to do a hash r-table, and we're going to go ahead and give it a border of 1 px space solid space black. And what this means is this is a shorthand property. So what it's doing is this 1px here is giving it a border, like I think it's a border width of 1px, and then it's giving it a border I'm actually not sure what the second one means. It's border, or yeah, it's just border colon solid, and then it's giving it a black color as the third piece. So what this means altogether is it'll be a border that's 1 pixel thick, it'll be solid black. And if I save this, notice it gives the whole thing a border around. And that's because the table itself, if we inspect the element, the table itself is this square right here that contains everything else. Now, if we want to make this look more like an actual table, like a spreadsheet kind of table, we want to actually include the table rows and the table headers, and we want to give them all borders. So in order to do that, for example, we can just say, we can actually, let's just use this as a simple exercise for classes. So this table, where instead of an ID, we're going to give it a class attribute of bordered. And then the same thing with here, we'll go class equals bordered. And then we're just going to copy this and paste because we want to give this, this class to every single element. And keep in mind, this is not something you typically do like actually when you're writing this type of code, but this is a good like kind of demonstration of what classes are. So I'm going to go ahead and paste, and there we go. So I added the class equals bordered attribute to every single element inside this table. And whoops, I did not, you did not need to add it to the closed elements. That was my bad. I think that was all of them, right. And just a side note here, again, you wouldn't normally be doing this like this, the way it's set up here, but rather you would have like a h1, maybe class equals red, and then maybe you would have a p, and then a class equals red. Like, classes are generally things that several different elements will share. And then again, if you do not recall, the benefit of using a class over an ID is that an ID can only apply, or should only be used to apply styles to a single element, to a single paragraph, a single header, a single div, while a class can be applied to an unlimited amount of elements, basically. As long as you give them the class, they'll get the style. So if we come back into here, and our table no longer works because we're not using an ID, so the hash doesn't work. And if you remember, to actually select a class, you want to use a dot. You use a dot, and then I think we wanted bordered. And then if we save that, notice there is now a border around our table. So that that's pretty much been tables, I think. Yep, border. And then there's, I guess, a little bit more. We want to set the width. So of course, if you'll notice here, this table is very small. It only is as big as it needs to be to hold its data. But one styling we can add to this is width. So specifically, if I come here, back to this table, it has a class. I can actually still add an ID. I can give it an ID equals, and then also have it with a class. So I can bring back our table, that ID, and then we can come here into our styling and select it again, r-table. This time, however, we want to give it a width of 100%. And 100% is essentially going to make this table grow to the size of its container. In this case, it's going to grow to the entire page. So if I save this right now, boom, its width expands to the width of the page. And if I resize it, the width grows and shrinks accordingly. So that's one cool thing. And that remember percentages, what that means is it grows to its parent container. And what that like actually turns out to be in practice is if you say had a div inside this table, then if you give it a width of 100%, it would only grow to as big as its containment inside the table. So like it doesn't necessarily, 100% doesn't mean 100% of the screen. It just means 100% of the parent container. And if you see right here, this table's parent is body, meaning the table is inside the body tag. And the body means the entire website. So that's why it grows to the entire page. And of course, another thing to keep in mind is we can also add a height. We can add a height of 10 pixels, for example, or oops, let's make it bigger, like 50 pixels, or actually, wait, we might not be able to add a height. Never mind. Sorry, that was my bad. We actually can't add a height. It's mainly a width here. So yeah, that was pretty much tables and their styling. And let's just check those off. If you do want to read more about tables, I have a link here in the resources section. And I think I'm going to be actually putting these links into the description of the video as well, since it is a little bit of a pain to navigate to the GitHub to get these links. So yeah, I'll put this reading, this further reading for tables into the description. So yeah, if you want to see future videos in this series, or if you happen to miss a previous concept, go ahead and check out the playlist linked in the description where I'll be uploading daily. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.